It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My guest today is David Mansilla, CEO of ISU Corp. ISU is a custom software solutions company with clients ranging from startups to multi-million-dollar conglomerates like General Electric and Heinz. Located in Canada's Silicon Valley, ISU increases entrepreneurs' net profits with exceptional custom software solutions. Most recently, ISU has been chosen as a recipient of the Canadian Business Excellence Award for the 6th year in a row as a recognition of their outstanding company culture and effective processes. David is passionate about inspiring others, and a priority in his life is sharing his experience in hopes of encouraging a new generation of entrepreneurs to reach their full potential. David is the host of the Break Free podcast, where he invites a diverse set of guests to bring audiences valuable knowledge on living life on their own terms, whether it's professionally or personally. David is also a #1 international best-selling author of his book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. David Mansilla, welcome to the Corner Office.
Hey, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to have you here again. And we spoke a few weeks back. I'm assuming you're still up in beautiful Canada today, or are you in a different part of the country now that we're into the summer months?
I'm right at home in Canada.
Nice.
Enjoying
Boy,
the summer for sure.
Yeah, and all those fires that you folks have been having. I hope that you and your property hasn't been threatened, or is that quite a bit away from where you're currently living?
It's about 800 miles away, but
Yeah.
the smoke came here and it
Oh,
was horrible for about a week. The air quality
yeah.
was very bad.
Yeah. Well, let's hope those get pulled out soon. But anyway, we always like to kind of start off our podcast and understand a little bit about the background of our guests. And let's start with your early years. Tell us where you grew up and what your early family life was like.
Yeah, early years. Well, I was born and raised in Guatemala City, Guatemala. If people don't know what
Right.
that is, it's
Beautiful
south of
country.
Mexico. It's the next country in the American continent after Mexico. Um,
Right.
Humble beginnings for sure. Um, my my mom passed away when I was 2.5 years old, so own
Oh, so
parents,
young.
so they could actually take care of me. So that was something that impacted my life dramatically until
Yeah.
it's crazy until recently. I have to I have to admit that it was something that it took a while for me to get over it. But hey, now
I can
it's
imagine.
totally.
Did you have older brothers and sisters, David?
Yeah, we were six siblings. Six
6.
siblings, five are remaining. One, my oldest brother, was killed in the Civil War. The country had a civil war for 36
Mm.
years, and he was killed there in the 80s. Um, when my mom passed away, my younger sister was 6 months old, and I was 2.5 years old. So my other
Wow. Wow.
brothers and sisters were 10 years, 12 years, and 14 years old.
Yeah, yeah. And did they kind of all step in and then became a stronger family unit in that regard? I imagine probably the eldest, a lot of responsibility fell on him or her.
Yeah, it was for sure a traumatic event. To be honest with you, I don't know how my dad lived his life so positively. He passed away 7 years ago at the age
Mm.
of 82, and I have never met a more positive man than he is. And it has a lot to do with his faith in Christ. He was always
Yeah,
hand to hand with the Lord, even though he had his times of doubt, like everybody does. But imagine his life, right? He loses his wife in 1976, and then his sons
Gosh,
dies in 1982. Actually, 1974 is when
that's
my
super.
mom died.
Yeah.
Incredible, eh?
What kind of work did your father do?
He was an entrepreneur. He had multiple businesses before he passed
Hmm.
away. He had, at some point, he had a logistics company. He owned several transport trucks doing cold storage transport throughout Central America. He was also in energy. He had a factory that developed batteries for cars. Oh my God, many, many businesses.
Huh.
At the end of his life, he was the CEO of a factory with over 300 employees, and they did
Wow.
injected mold plastic uh, plastic containers, for
Right.
for shampoos and stuff like that. Yeah,
Consumer
consumer
products.
products. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Did some of your older siblings also work to help support the family in those early
No,
years?
no, my wife was always self-sufficient in that case, in that regard. Some
Yeah.
years were very hard for sure. I remember, back home, if you don't go for private school, the public schooling system is horrible. So I remember
Hmm.
sometimes he couldn't pay for up to 4 or 5 months the tuition, but then he will come in and he'll pay the entire year because a good business had closed and he had money. You know. So
Right. Right.
regarding this interview, I think it's beautiful because I was living the life of my dad as an entrepreneur, and that impacted my life unconsciously. You know,
Yeah. It
I
sounds
think
like it.
if
Yeah.
you look at my
Yeah.
siblings, all of us are entrepreneurs. Everybody's working on their own
Right.
business. Yeah.
Right. Well, it sounds like your dad had a huge influence on you. What are some of the things that you remember other than him just being a great person? Obviously, a good Christian. But what are some of the things or sayings or impressions that he made on you when you were young, if you can recall?
I think his positive attitude. He really
Hmm.
taught me how I decide how I'm going to feel today, and that the
Right.
life is being played one day at a time. And regardless of what goes on in your life, you can choose to still stay positive, regardless how hard it seems to be. He also
Yeah.
taught me the act of grieving. He said, you have to take your time to grieve, but don't allow grieving take over your whole life because then you'll be a zombie,
Yeah.
right? You'll be a dead man
Right.
walking, right?
Right. Or if you don't grieve and you keep it inside, it can really come out in other ways that aren't particularly
Oh, that's
attractive.
even worse. That's even worse. People actually
Yeah.
get cancer from that,
Right.
right?
That's right. That's right.
Suppressed
Yeah.
emotions.
Any other influences? Any other influencers in your life? Were your
Oh,
grandparents involved in your
definitely.
upbringing, and uncles and
My
aunts?
grandfather. So my name comes after my grandfather, and he raised me
Uh,
from I was 2.5 years old until I was 10. When I was 10, I moved back to my father because he could actually take care of me then because I was older. But my
right.
grandpa, oh my God, he was one of the best role models I ever had in my life.
Hmm. Why was that?
Those people that are just are correct. That I never heard him say a bad word, for example. A
Hmm.
true definition of a gentleman. You know Also, a man for Christ. His heart was in the Lord, but he was 10 times more disciplined than my dad in that way. My dad was a believer, but
This was your dad's. Was this your dad's dad or your mother's dad?
that was my dad's dad, right?
Dad's dad, right? Yeah.
So, this man was exceptional. I still remember him. I said,
Hmm.
how can somebody live like that so many years and be so integral? Like these people that, they're human, but they're living a life of constant sanctification. Like every day for him was a day that he could be better for the Lord and for his family,
Wow.
you know. And I
Love
wish
it.
I could live up to that standard, but it's almost impossible.
Well, you've had some great role models. So you went to private school. Were you a good student?
No, I was a horrible student. Horrible student. In fact, if I wasn't for my grandfather, I wouldn't know how to read and write still. Um, when I when I was in grade one, I was supposed to learn how to read and write. It took me twice, three times as much as the normal kids. I almost don't make it to
Hmm.
grade two. It was hard. My poor grandpa had to come back after work at 7, 8 p.m. and be with me until midnight, teaching me how to read. It was the hardest thing that I
So he
ever
was your
done.
tutor as well as your mentor.
Oh yeah, he has so much patience. And then when I moved back
Yeah.
with my dad, I was doing so bad at school. Oh my God, so bad. I was losing all, like in grade four, I think I lost out of seven, I lost six subjects. So I was in summer school recovering. Grade
Wow.
five, the same thing, all to the point that my dad, the principal of the school told my dad, if I don't change, they'll have to, kick me out. Uh,
Were you just distracted, like involved in sports and other activities? Did you
I
not
just couldn't
find
pay
school
attention,
interesting? What?
right?
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
a super hyperactive kid. Little did I know that I was prescribed with ADHD last year, you see?
Okay. Well, there you go.
But
Yeah.
back then in the
Yeah.
80s, they didn't know this disease
Of
existed,
course.
right?
No. 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 Of course not. Did you do some entrepreneurial things? Did that kind of kick in early in
Always.
life?
Yeah.
Growing up in Guatemala, what types of entrepreneurial things were you
You,
doing
you
there?
you know, before I
Talk
answer
about
that
it.
question, I must say for the audience, if you have kids that are like me, you know what my dad did to change my behavior? He never spanked me. He never gave me a curfew. You know
Mm.
what he did? He started spending more time with me. He brought
Oh.
a mother airplane to my house. The day that I almost lose the year, he brings this model plane and he says, "Okay, we're gonna build this plane together." And he taught me how to build the planes,
Mm.
and we got the engine going, and then we went and flew the plane on the weekends. And then he told me, "For every class that you pass, I'm gonna give you a new plane, and we're gonna build it together."
He poured more into you.
The next year, sixth grade, I was in the honor roll. I was the best student in my class.
Wow.
You see,
Wow.
without concerta or
Great,
Everall,
great advice.
is just with love and attention,
Right.
right?
I love it. So tell us about some of the entrepreneurial things you did.
Yeah, so because of the model airplanes, and then my sister her husband was an airplane pilot, so I will go on the plane with him all the time on the weekends. I decided to become an airplane pilot myself. So,
Ah.
but I asked my dad, "Hey, I want to be an airplane pilot," and he says, "Where are you gonna get the money to get the classes from? It's $250,000 of training." So he said, "The only way is through the military." So I went to the military, and I did 2 years of military school to become an official in the Air Force.
And what age were you at that time?
Oh, I was a little kid. I was what, 14, 15 years
Yeah.
old.
Wow.
Um, but remember, the country was at war, right? So it was a 5-year career, and then you become a lieutenant, and then you go to the mountains and fight.
Wow.
So they were kicking people out pretty fast, right? Um, During military school, I realized that a lot of the kids, by the way, this is like trying to get into the school is not easy, right? Like a thousand kids apply every year and 200 get in, right?
Wow.
So it's not like, oh, I'm gonna go to military school. No, because this is the official train. Like, this is the career path that will get you into becoming a leader in the military,
Right.
not just a boot soldier. So it's a professional career. So when I don't know how I got accepted. For the grace of God, I got accepted, and a big part of my success was because of the training that I got there. The emotional pain, the emotional trauma, the physical discipline, and also the values that the academy gave me, they are still holding high in my life today.
Hmm. What were some of those values?
Um, well, nothing gets half done. Everything gets completely done, and it
Yeah.
gets done on time. Just with that, I can be a successful business person,
Hmm.
right? I am not responsible for anybody else's decisions, but I am fully responsible for my decisions, and I can inspire others to follow me by looking at my example. I cannot demand of anybody else what I cannot do myself. Think about that,
I love it. I love
right?
it.
You earn the right of respect by showing that you can be as respectful as you want to be
Yeah. Yeah.
with your
Golden rule,
actions.
isn't it? Huh? Golden rule.
Yeah,
So you
right.
went on to university. I believe you did that in Guatemala, right? Before coming to Canada.
Yeah, my computer science degree is from Guatemala, and then I had another one here in Canada. But
Right.
the first entrepreneurial thing that I did is I noticed that all these kids in the military school wanted to have the boots that the officials wore. The officials were all teachers, right? Like, so everyone were captains, and They were senior people in the military, and they were teaching us, and they had these amazing boots. So through my connections with my friends, one of my buddies, his dad was a colonel in the army, so we had access to the official store where they bought those boots. So we will go get the boots, and we will sell them for double the price to the kids.
Nice. Nice.
So that was my first business.
I love it. I love it. And did
Yeah.
that help? I mean, is public education, university education also private in Guatemala?
Yeah,
Was there a high
everything
tuition
changes,
fee?
right? So
Yeah.
public education in Guatemala at the university level is one of the best that I've seen, even compared
Mm,
to first world countries. Especially the public university is so good. Most of the best doctors and engineers come out of the public university.
right. Huh.
But private universities are very good too. So it's crazy because the lower end, like the high school education and below, is not as good in a public system. The private schools are pretty good, but then once you go into your university level, it's very good, and very little people get the chance to go.
Right.
So I went to computer science because they decided to close the airplane academy after 2 years in my
Mm,
military education because they had too many people and very little planes. So, and I didn't want to be in the infantry or in the Navy. So I actually left, and I decided to follow computer science. You know how or why?
no, I was going to be my
In the
next
80s.
question. So you tell
In
us
the
how.
80s, they wanted that you had to pass this typewriting exam. Remember the typewriters? I
Oh
don't think
yeah.
people know what that is anymore.
That's how I learned to type.
So I needed to pass a typewriting exam, but if you made one mistake, you have to start the whole page over again. And I
Mm,
was so frustrated, and we were having a celebration in my house, and my uncle came, and my uncle was the CIO for one of the largest banks in Guatemala back in the 80s. So he had the whole IT department under his command,
mm.
and he told me, you know what, I'll show you how I do it at the office. So I went, and that was the first time I saw a computer in my life.
Ah,
He took me to the computer lab at the bank, and he showed me my first text editor, and he's like, okay, see, I press here. If I make a mistake, I click back here and tick, 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 and then I hit this button, and off the page prints.
wow.
I'm like, how do you do that? I want to learn how to do
Right,
it.
right.
So I fell in love with automation from my uncle's influence. So from there, I actually left the military academy, and I went right into computer science. Years. So basically, you do
Right,
your 4 years, you almost like do a master's afterward, but it's
right,
obligatory.
right.
Um,
Got it.
so after 5 years, I graduated. I was very, very young, very early. And then I moved to Canada.
Yeah. Let's back up. I want to get that transition. So,
This is why I landed in Canada. My brother got married. My oldest brother, the surviving oldest brother, got married. And he went on his honeymoon to Cancun, Mexico. And
ah,
he met in that trip, he met a couple from Canada for the whole week, and they convinced him that this was a beautiful country and he should come do his postgraduate degree here.
ah, got
So
it.
my brother came as a student to do his business degree here in Waterloo. That's why I'm actually in this university town still.
Wow.
So he came, and then I graduated computer science, and then he told me he's also an entrepreneur, right? So he, on the last year of university here in Canada, he started his own business, and it was going very well. Like he started growing really fast, and he couldn't handle it with all the manual paperwork, and he knew I knew how to write systems. So back then, I already wrote a systems to do payroll automation in a 300-person company, and I reduced the payroll from 1 week of manual processing to 5 hours
Wow.
writing a program in a microcomputer. So he knew this. So he came back home, and he said, "I'll give you a job if you move with me." And so I came. I came to Canada to write his invoicing system. But then I realized I couldn't get any other job, because back in 1991 when I came, if you were any type of engineer from any other country and you were in Canada, you will never get a job with a title from another country. So I had two choices, right? I could resign and do odd jobs, or I
Yeah,
could go back
manual
to school
labor.
and do it
Yeah,
all over
right.
again.
Yeah.
And you know what my grandfather did? Do you remember my grandfather? He
Hmm.
said, time will always go by. And another 3, 4 years is not going to make a big difference in your life. You're still young. Go back to school, get your degree, and continue your career. So
Hmm.
that's what I did.
Sage advice. Sage advice. So you went another 3 years then, or 4 years?
I did another 3 years here.
Went 3 years here. Wow.
Yeah,
And then just got the same degree again.
same. Yeah,
Yeah.
same again. More than full time. So when I went, I was already had, when I went back to school, I already had 2 kids. My wife, she came with me.
She's from
Uh,
Guatemala. Okay. Hmm.
she's from Guatemala. So we came with a baby, my baby daughter, my oldest daughter. And then 2 years later, we had my second kid. And then I went to university. So I needed to get out as fast as possible. So I was taking night program, summer, like I did it so fast.
So were you working for your brother during that period of time while you're
Yeah,
going to
that was
school?
the
Yeah.
blessing because I was working for
Yeah.
my brother. He gave me flex hours so I could take as many courses as possible.
Right. Nice. What was the first job that you took coming out of college in Canada?
I didn't. I opened my own business.
Ah, so that's when ISU got founded, is it?
No, no,
No?
it was another company. And again, another naive move, right? The government of Canada had an entrepreneurial program back then because we're talking 1994, 1995.
Right.
The internet was about to explode, and the government of Canada knew that. So he was giving these 1 year intensive MBA like programs for
Hmm.
anybody that was in technology that wanted to become an entrepreneur. So I took that. So I graduated university and then I went into that government program paid by the government. And the thing was that if you pass that program, if you actually you were able to graduate from the program, the government will give you a loan from a
Hmm.
private bank backed by the government. So if you went out of business, the government will pay for that loan.
Nice.
So I finished the program, got the money, started my own business thinking that I was going to become a software consultant because I already had 2 degrees and I did this invoicing system for my brother. Little did I know that every door that I knocked, they tore me down because they saw me as a junior developer. So nobody wanted to trust me their businesses with
Hmm.
to me. So I ended up selling computers because I needed to make some meets, right? So
Right.
to make the long story short, it was a horrible moment in my life. I learned a ton. I stayed 2 years in that business. Basically, my wife was sustaining the family. She was, you know, it was crazy. She was having a full-time job, taking care of the 2 kids while I was losing money every month in the business. Basically, I lost money every month. But I actually happened to get a lot of clients. So by the end of the second year, I was just praying to God, God, please get me out of this. It was a horrible, horrible experience,
Yeah.
especially with the finances and not being able to provide for my family. I was feeling, I don't know, I was feeling really very, very bad.
Were you able to
So
connect with your faith there in Canada? Did you have a church that you found, and or
yeah,
was
that
your
was a blessing.
yeah?
My grandmother actually got us into a church here with my wife. They started looking for churches, and thank God we found a beautiful church, Guadalupe Pentecostal Assembly. We still go to that church actually, and
Oh.
filled with the Holy Spirit for sure. So beautiful, beautiful place. Uh, so you know what happened to that business? I thought, okay, this is it. I cannot do this anymore. So either I'll declare myself bankrupt, but I didn't want to do that, right? Uh, or I don't know what to do. So I started praying, and my wife started praying. The whole family started praying for God to deliver us. Because I didn't only have the debt from the bank, I also maxed out all my credit cards, right? So I was getting surrounded by debt. But as one of the summers that I had the business, I got a co-op student. This
Hmm.
kid was so interested in learning how to build computers and put operating systems and all that. And so I told him, I cannot pay you, but you can come work for me at the summer if you want, for free, right? So he did the whole 3, 4 months, and he was so happy. He comes in October
Hmm.
with his dad. I remember he enters my business, my office. He enters and he says, "This is my dad, and we want to buy your business." And his dad comes out and he says, "How much do you want for your business?" And I had the number in my head. The number was the amount of money that I owed everybody. So I gave him the number, and he was so surprised. And he told me, "Are you sure?" I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. Are you absolutely sure? I'm like, I'm
Right.
sure.
Right.
I was thinking he wanted to give me less, right? So,
Yeah.
and then he says, I'm gonna give
Right.
this check.
Right. Well, that's God gives us everything we need, right?
And I
When we
felt
need it.
so thankful, so thankful. So basically, I broke even. I sold the business for the amount of debt that I had, and then I had to go get a real job.
Hmm.
But little did I know, years later, I had over 1,000 clients on my database. So even though I was losing money, the company had brand value. I could have sold that business for 4 times as
Yeah.
much money as they gave me.
Yeah.
But I didn't know. That's why he was so surprised asking me. That was
Nice.
all the money that I wanted from the business, you see? But I didn't know anything about business back then. So it was a blessing.
So when did ISU come along?
Yeah, for sure. It was such a, and the amount of gratitude that you feel after you get delivered from something like that. Oh, looking for a job for me, and after getting my job, my first job, oh, I just was so thankful that I was doing 2 times as much as everybody else. And that's what got launched my
Right.
career. Because
Right.
I from they hired me as an intermediate developer because they validated the 2 years of business that I had. Plus, now they validated all the schooling that I did. Uh, in 2 years, I was managing teams already. By 4 years, I was at the director level, moving from jobs to jobs, right? So I grew in the corporate ladder really, really fast.
Ah, and you had three children at that time? Yeah, two or three children. Three children at that time.
My wife was pregnant while I was looking for a job with our third kid. And so we were praying hard to get that job. I had to send 300 resumes because now we're talking 1998. Still, being a developer wasn't that that popular back then in Canada. But I got the job, and the job was just enough for us to be beautiful and happy. But my wife had this thing in her heart. She wanted to buy her own house, right? And I want my own house, but we don't have the down payment or the money or anything. Uh, I always wanted to become a software consultant. 3 months into my full-time job, somebody calls my business phone line, which I still had because it was routed to my personal phone, and he said, "Do you? I hear that you write software systems for point of sale systems." I'm like, "Yes, I do." And then I went to see the guy, and then to make the long story short, he hired me to write a point of sale system for a large, large, large warehouse and retail store. But I had to go, ask my boss, like, can I do this? And he said, yeah, we just got to change the contract because it has no conflict with your full-time job as long as you do it after work. So to make the long story short, the Lord provided the same income that I was doing during the day at night, and that allowed me to get my first house. Well, I started that contract a month after my baby daughter was born.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, just a perfect timing, huh?
And so look at the miracles, right? So this is what I want people to understand. You can do anything and everything, and you can work day and night. And if it knows the Lord's will to prosper you, you will not prosper. Because
Amen.
everything that I've seen in my life, everything that I have has been done in such a way that I can only give the Lord all the glory. Of course, I did
Yeah.
my effort. Of course, I was there, right? But at the same time, when you see these things happen, you know how I got the down payment for my first house, by the way? My wife was doing the taxes during those years that I had my business, and she was missing a lot of things that you could deduct. So I went back to a professional accountant just to make sure the taxes were right, and they
Right.
found enough money in tax credits to get the down payment for my first house,
Nice.
and I didn't know.
Nice.
So tell me how
Perfect.
how how was that my doing? No, man, it was given to me.
So ISU was born, and that's about what 27, 28 years ago. When did that first spawn?
No. So, I mean, I started consulting part-time while I was having my full-time jobs. It wasn't
Right.
called ISU yet, but yeah, it was my own consulting gig. ISU was formed in 2005 when I made a leap of faith. I left this, the six-figure salary. I left the corner office and all the reputation
Huh.
and the vacations and the bonuses, and I said, okay, it's time for me to try again, right? Full time. So My wife gave me a 5-year ultimatum. She said, if within 5 years you don't retire me, you go back to get a job. Because this is now the second time she's sustaining the family, you see?
Right. Right.
And I retire her in 5 years.
Nice. 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 And today, tell us about ISU. What do you do, and how many employees, and what's the breadth of your business?
Yeah, so I've been blessed. I run multiple businesses now. Last time I counted were 7 or 8 businesses.
Hmm.
I do collaboration with other entrepreneurs. That's how I actually get to have so many businesses. But my main business is ISU Corp. We are about 60 people, all software BAs, and then the supporting staff, marketing, sales, and administration. It's a beautiful, it's such a beautiful way of living, because I don't run the businesses anymore.
Hmm.
I have been able to get enough knowledge to run self-managing companies, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
How would you say your leadership styles evolved over time, David?
ooh, dramatically.
Yeah.
I thought I was a good leader, but I wasn't. I was treating my business like I was treated in the military school.
Hmm.
And that's good up to a point, but you can understand that your employees are not soldiers. Your employees are people, and people have dignities and they have families. And I learned that the hard way. I almost went bankrupt because of the way I was treating my people. So when I opened up my eyes and realized that I wasn't a good leader, I took a year off in 2013 and I took a leadership course, a
Huh.
postgraduate degree in leadership, specifically for computer scientists that wanted to become good leaders.
Right. And what were some of the things you learned there?
Oh, everything. Culture. Culture, the Lord used a change in culture to change my life and,
Yeah.
and to make me the multimillionaire that I am right now. After I
Hmm.
finished the course in 2013, number one, my faith came back because when we're talking about all these years, faith goes in and out, right? You come out and
Right.
you go into a desert and you think you're by yourself, and then the Lord rescues you and you believe in God again. And this life is full of up and downs, right?
Yeah.
But I got my faith back in at the end of 2013, and I started treating people as people, and I gave them as much freedom as I could, and I
Yeah.
set 3 values and only 3 values, and that changed my whole culture. I told them, we're here just first, we're here in gratitude because we have a job. Then we're here to grow because if we don't grow, we die. And then we're here to give back, right?
Hmm.
So if we don't give back as a corporation, then we're not doing something right.
Yeah.
And three
Yeah.
values everybody remembered. Everybody knew that we needed to be grateful. And still today, before we do any meetings, we say, everybody, each one in the meeting says, what are you grateful for today? And that changes the whole attitude of the meeting.
Yeah.
So we live
Yeah.
our values. And
Beautiful.
that's what culture is. Culture is the instilled values in the employee that allows them to make the decisions when the boss is not watching.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. How do you hire good people? What do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in?
Attitude, right?
Hmm.
Of course, we look for the technical skills, but being hired by us is very hard. My pipeline for people that want to work for us is longer than my pipeline for the people that we sell, our services to. And it's just
Hmm.
because if you have a basket of beautiful strawberries, if you put a rotten strawberry in the middle, those other strawberries will go rotten really fast. So we
Yep.
really, really, really make sure that we don't have rotten tomatoes in our fridge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it's hard. We still make mistakes, but the people that get in, they become part of the family. And that's another thing that I told them. We are a family, even though we're only 60 people, we have people in 9 countries, and we are connected by technology, but we are family. We do stuff for each other above and beyond the business hours and above and beyond our workload, right?
Culture is such a hard thing to interview for. As you know, I work in recruiting, and I always try to get very deep with my clients. And sometimes, they don't understand their own culture, and that's a big inhibitor in their ability to be able to hire good people. How in an interview situation, David, how do you get at that? What kind of questions do you ask? How do you kind of get underneath that veneer of a standard type of interview to really find out if this is the kind of person you want to hire?
Yeah, I haven't done hiring for about 7 years now. The HR
Yeah,
department
yeah,
does that. But their
right.
mandates when they were trainees, we ask questions, family questions, right? Uh, so when we ask the family questions, they really show up who they are, right? Do they respect their parents? Do they honor their parents?
Mm,
If they have family, do they respect their wife or their husband? What is the situation? Even if they might not be people of faith, because of course we may have people that don't share our Christian faith, but those values are important. What's
yeah.
the order in life, right? Is your job first, or is your kids and family first? So we ask questions around day-to-day living that really you can detect really well. I mean, they can still hide it and they can still, you know, lie about that, but it's hard. And most people don't get these questions in normal job interviews, so they get surprised. So they tell the truth most of the time.
One of my CEO's clients and also a podcast guest says that one of the things he really enjoys doing is taking a top candidate out for lunch and see how they treat the wait staff.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
Right? And do they treat them with deference? Do they treat them as equals? Are they polite? Are they kind? Are they demanding? Are they rude? Do they have a different type of caste approach? And he says it's incredibly revealing. And he's do a lot of other things too to get at those qualifications and so forth. But in his culture, treating people, regardless of where they are in the organization, as equals is an extremely important part of what their culture is all about. And he's fired a couple of very good prospects, or not hired rather, a couple of very good prospects after the lunch interview, just for that.
It's yeah, because you're in a social environment, right?
Yeah,
It's incredible. But that's what you look for. I can always teach technology to people. I mean, our technical tests are very
right.
serious and they're very hard, and we have 3 tests that they have to go through. But the attitude interviews, I think we do 2 or 3 too, and they just keep getting harder on social environments, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then you have your 3 months probation anyway, where really you can.
That's right. That's right. That stuff comes out. Yeah,
Because if you think about it, like, all my people have the blessing to be completely independent. That's part of
yeah,
my culture. If I'm gonna hire you, it's because I know you can do this job better than I can, and you're responsible enough to deliver on time and respectful enough to help others, right?
yeah. No, that's
So another
beautiful.
thing that we look for is how good of team players they are, because I have had the mistake of hiring the best technologists, and they are just for themselves and by themselves, and they are arrogant, and yeah, they perform great, but it's a roadblock in the whole company. So
Right.
I rather let them go and get the rock stars that are also team players.
Yeah. Yeah. Very important. Well, David, you've been very generous with your time, but we're just about out of it. But we always ask one last question of all our guests, and that's kind of what career and life advice would you give to someone who maybe has their eyes on their own corner office someday, or an entrepreneur like yourself that plans to, start and run several businesses? What would you tell them?
Um, Number one, find out what your priorities are.
Hmm.
Make sure that your future is better than your present, and to remember that all things can be done if God is in your side.
Hmm. Beautiful. Love it. David Mansilla, founder and CEO of ISU Corp. Thank you so very, very much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here. God bless you, man.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.